Hello and welcome into another episode of South Bay Sports Radio. Today, I'm joined by Jimmy Borell, the boys lacrosse coach at Loyola High School here in Los Angeles. Jimmy, thank you for joining me as always.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Appreciate you.
Of course. Before we get into your roots, take me back to this past season. The Cubs won a CIF Southern Section crown. But when did you realize this season was going to be a special one?
We had a ton of returning guys from last year's team, kind of had a heartbreaking one-goal loss in the CIF championship where, I think a lot of teams didn't think we'd even make it to the championships, getting a big upset over Foothill in the semis and then, making it to the finals and really, really becoming one goal short of the ultimate prize, right? But we had two of our starting defenders out for the season with an injury. And we just knew we were bringing back a lot of big guns and a lot of returning guys, especially on both sides of the ball and especially in key positions, face off and goalie and our stud attackman Trip King, who is he's a South Bay Manhattan Beach kid who, as a freshman, got Offensive Player of the Year for the Mission League. So. As well as you got a bunch of awards, All-American, all LA, all that good stuff. So we knew we'd be pretty good, but we also knew we were still pretty young. And we started two sophomores and a junior at attack, sophomore face-off guy. Our goalie, our starting sophomore goalie ended up getting hurt. So our backup goalie is a junior, ended up starting, had an unbelievable season. We just had a lot of youth, and I wasn't sure how it was gonna work out, making sure everyone was finding their role, was doing the best that they could do. But it just got, I think in January, where there was a couple of those preseason tournaments that you kind of get to see how all the other top dogs are looking, right? Your Mater Days of the world and Foothill and St. Margaret, Santa Margarita Catholic, CDM, the usual suspects. And we looked pretty darn good compared to those two teams. I thought we had a really successful fall. So we go to a recruiting tournament back east twice a year as Loyola. It's called the NHSLS. It's been around since I think 2013. But all the top high schools in the nation go there. And it's a little different from the club scene because it's you got who you got. It's your own guys. So going back there and competing against some of the best teams in the country, and this fall for the first time we went undefeated at that tournament, whereas 5 years ago when we started doing this, if we could win a game, I'd be happy. Or if guys weren't like completely intimidated or scared, I'd be happy. And now, we expect to win against the best teams in the country. So I think that was pretty special. I was like, wow, this team has the potential, to go places. So, but yeah, that kind of January tournament really cemented things for me. We're like, all right, we got a pretty good chance at this thing.
Beautiful. All right, let's go back to your earliest memories of falling in love with lacrosse.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool story just because, I was a late bloomer athletically and certainly started lacrosse late. Grew up playing soccer, basketball. Once I think seventh or eighth grade, we finally talked my mom into letting me play football. And, just like it is here, I'm sure. But, on the East Coast, everything's kind of weight and age based. So, for my age, I had to be a minimum of 85 pounds to play in the 110 pound division. And I had to wear double sweatpants, double sweatshirt, have some quarters in my pockets just so I could make that 85-pound cutoff. I was just a skinny runt, but I love the physicality. I love to hit. So, getting to play, rec football or, Pop Warner football was just such a cool experience. And then freshman year, I wasn't even big enough to play freshman football. So I had to continue to play Pop Warner football, which is pretty funny. So, I got to play high school football for the first time sophomore year. And then, I had a bunch of my buddies who, who were either basketball guys or football guys, and a couple who were just your typical I've had a stick in my hand since third grade type of guy. We're like, oh, Jimmy, you should come play this. And we were messing around in their backyard the day before tryouts my sophomore year. And it was just fun. It had a little bit of every sport in it. It had some basketball, had some football, had some hockey, had a little soccer in there. I just loved it. And so they kind of convinced me to play. And I think what helped a lot is my defensive back coach for football was the head JV coach. So I went to my dad and I was like, so kind of a time crunch, but is there any way we could go buy some lacrosse gear so I can try out the next day? So we go to, luckily there's one of those lacrosse stores not too far away from us. We went over there and I'm just like watching my dad's like face change and like blood start to boil, like as he's ringing up shoulder pads, elbow pads, gloves, like a helmet, stick. And I'm just like, and he literally just turns and goes, you better not quit. But it's we were fortunate because we didn't make JV didn't have cuts, and I went to a very big public high school. Almost 30, I think 3,500 kids in the high school, and another 2,000 in the middle school, and both of those are connected, right? So it was a very big school. They didn't make cuts, so we had about 70 kids on the JV team. So I started out as a sixth line midfielder, right? Which like I think you might get one or two reps a game. And I'll just never forget. I get in there, I run by a guy. I'm pretty sure my eyes were closed, and I just shot the ball, and I got like absolutely smoked. Again, I'd not hit puberty this point, so I'm like tiny, but the ball went in. My teammates picked me up. We're like, yeah, you scored. And then like with so many guys on the team, we do make it take it, right? So whatever line scored, you get to, you get to go again. So we got to go again. I ended up scoring again, and like I was hooked after that. Like you could not get the stick out of my hand. It was an absolute blast. That was kind of where I fell in love with the sport, and fortunate that I kind of fell in love with it right away.
Let's go back to high school. Lake Braddock High in Virginia. You were a four-sport athlete. How would you describe your prep career as a student athlete?
Yeah, I love sports. My dad urged me to play every single sport growing up. And we were fortunate at a big public school. A lot of our sports are great. I kind of had the come to Jesus moment after sophomore year of basketball, where like I'm not going to be 6'5". Varsity might be a little tough for me. But football was looking good. I made varsity as a junior. I started at cornerback. That winter I didn't end up doing anything, but I found indoor track my senior year. So indoor track, it's a 200-meter track. It's pretty fast. It's honestly, it can get a little physical at times, just with banked turns and stuff like that. It was a cool thing, and honestly, like just like lacrosse, I got talked into doing it by a couple of soccer buddies and lacrosse buddies and football buddies that were like, it's a great way to compete in state champ. We had the best coach in Virginia. Like we were known for winning state championships. And I wanted to get faster, obviously, and get in great shape. So I ended up switching from basketball to track. My senior year, we ran indoor track. We had a relay team of what ended up being two Division I lacrosse players, a Division I soccer player, and a Division I track guy. And we won states in the 4x2 and the 4x4. I ended up being like district champ in the hurdles. I just loved it, and the long jump as well. So I kind of did everything like an athlete would do, but just the team experience of like being a part of a relay, winning states, going to national. Like it was just such a cool team experience that I absolutely love. I love being on a team. I love being a part of something bigger than myself, right? And that's one of the beauties of sports. So I had a good football season, had a good track season, then I ended up having a good spring lacrosse season, and also ran outdoor track as well while playing lacrosse. So it was a busy senior year for me, but I kind of hit my stride athletically, and it was fun to go out as state champs in track my senior year. So it was fun.
After high school, you go to the Air Force Academy Prep School and then the University of Maryland. What went into the decision to go to a prep school, and why did you want to be a terrapin?
Well, I think the prep school is the best thing that I think could ever happen to me. Not hitting puberty until after sophomore year, like in between the summer of sophomore and junior year, I grew 7 inches. So going like 5'2" to 5'9" was kind of a big deal. I really loved football. I was getting a little love from like I think they call it FCS now or FBS. I can't remember, but like 1AA, what used to be called 1A. So I was getting a little love from, a couple of those D3 schools, Georgetown for football. But, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like this lacrosse thing was still new, but like I also kind of wanted to play college football. But I also realized that I'm probably not going to get taller than 5'11", 6'1", and, not the fastest guy. So I don't know how, other than who was it, Jason Sehorn back in the day, there wasn't a ton of white corners out there, So I was just like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and got just like luck of the draw. So like Dave Petramala is at Johns Hopkins, and he's coming out to see two of our junior defenders who end up going to play D1, and he just sees me like clear the ball. But this is spring of senior year, so like everything's kind of done. And again, I'm coming off track season, so I don't look fast anymore, but I used to be a little faster. But he sees me clear and he's like, "Man, I want that guy," blah blah. And all of a sudden, like that just kind of like jarred some things in me. Where like like what a cool thing that the best defenseman of all time, one of the best coaches of all time, like wants me at Hopkins. I had zero interest in Hopkins, but three of my best friends' dads were colonels in the Air Force. We're Northern Virginia family, right? The DC area is obviously a lot of government employees or contractors. So they were kind of putting stuff in my ear like, "Hey, you ever thought of Air Force? You could probably play football and lacrosse there." And I was like, well, not really. But, my dad did go to Kings Point, the Merchant Marine Academy. Um, so yeah, I wasn't against academies by any means. So I think it was cool because it was like at the last ditch effort, the lacrosse coach at Air Force was able to get me into the prep school. And especially for someone who didn't know what he wanted to do, it was a perfect opportunity. Like, hey, I can get a free education. Back then they paid us $1,000 a month to go there, plus everything, for free. I got to play, a lower level college football because when I got there, they didn't have a lacrosse team at the prep school. They do now, but I was like, oh, I'll just walk on the football team, and ended up starting at cornerback, punt returner, and was a captain there as well at the prep school. So I had an awesome experience. You get to go through basic training. Is obviously very intense. I just love the physical aspect of like the military, the leadership opportunities, the discipline. It was, and obviously serving the country, but yeah, when I did a year at the prep school, graduated from the prep school, I ended up doing a year at the academy and playing lacrosse there. Just ended up not being for me. It was one of those times, just you're going through a time in your life where I battled some depression, I battled a lot of anger issues, and just kind of burnt myself out and just decided that, hey, like I love lacrosse. I want to go continue to play this at a high level. Air Force Academy is not for me. So I decided to transfer to Maryland. Luckily, I had, when I decided to leave, I had offers to Maryland and Towson and a walk-on offer to UVA. So, I did my visits, and Maryland was just, I loved the culture right away. I loved the guys right away, just the history. I mean, frankly, I was a little nervous, a little scared, and I wasn't even sure if I could play at that level, just being that new to lacrosse. I think my road at Maryland was like almost equally as tough. I get in and they decide, to redshirt me for a year, right? So I'm going against the top two defensemen in the nation that year as like a scout guy, and Lee Zink and Chris Pasavia, and I'm just getting the absolute crap beat out of me every single day. But I'm also like lifting with the team, playing with the team in my off days, or when like they're playing games, when the team's playing games and obviously I'm not participating, like I would go in and run the stadium and work with our strength and conditioning coach every single time like the team like had a game. Yeah, obviously I'm going to the game, but I don't get to suit up as a red shirt. So it was one of those years where like developmentally and physically, like I got really strong. I got a lot better at lacrosse going against the best guys in the nation. Like I think my coach used to call me like the scout team All-American just because like I was Kyle Harrison one week, and then I'm like Johnny Christmas the next week, and then I'm like it was just funny. I ended up being like the other team's best player every single week. Just get the crap beat out of me. But man, what a great experience, and if I didn't have that year, like, once I got to the next year, like I was able to start right away. I was ready. So, I think if I would have been able to play right away, then I probably wouldn't have been as prepared as I was the next year. But again, had like the most amazing 3 years at Maryland. Got to play in a couple of Final Fours, won an ACC championship. Made best friends for the rest of my life. Learned a ton about the game and coaching and strength and conditioning. Like I kind of found my second passion while I was at Maryland, where I was a kinesiology major, right? So, you get to do a bunch of internships within the department, whether it was just testing at local middle schools, or again, like a lot of the anatomy and physiology, or even like, we're in the old skull caps and seeing how the brain was working and firing. It was just really cool. And I kind of found my second passion. I ended up, my last semester or last 2 semesters at Maryland, ended up not just working for the kinesiology department, but I ended up, once I graduated, I ended up writing the strength and conditioning program for the next year's team, and kind of executing that program, and also working with football and women's lacrosse. And it was really cool to be a part of, and something that, I still use today.
I love that. I love that. After college, you go to play professional lacrosse with stops here in LA, Denver, Ohio, Philly, and San Jose. What was that experience like, going from playing with some of the best to play professionally against not only some of the best in the region, but some of the best in the world?
Yeah, it was awesome. Again, something I never would have dreamed of doing, but just you always look at those guys who had a huge impact on you. The seniors. When I first got to Maryland, and we always used to celebrate the guys getting drafted together, and I'll never forget. One of them, Chris Pasavia and Lee Zink, just being like, that's gonna be you in a couple years, and I didn't want to like laugh in their face, but I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to play pro. Um, and then I had kind of an unfortunate injury my senior year where I broke my navicular bone 10 games in against Hopkins. I think it ended up being 1 or 2 games more than if I would have broken early. I probably could have gotten a medical red shirt, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to play in our last 5 or 6 games, and it was a pretty brutal injury. The same one that Yao Ming kind of had, and I don't know. They were like, I've never seen a lacrosse guy before, but it was a 4 month non-weight bearing injury, so I couldn't do anything. There's no rehab. Pretty much all I did was swim every single day, or go on one of those like swim joggers and just work out in the pool because you couldn't put any weight on it. And I ended up getting cleared it was 2 weeks before the NLL combine, so the National Lacrosse League, the box lacrosse. So I got cleared 2 weeks before that. I flew out to Colorado for the combine, and then I ended up running like the fastest 40-yard dash there. And I had, I hadn't, hadn't played in 4 months. But Philly drafted me, and like, I forget what it was, third round or something like that. And I was like, I'd never played box lacrosse before. But it was like, even the combine was like awesome. And then like the scrimmages was awesome. Like, some little Canadian kid runs in and just cross checks me right in the face. I'm like, oh, nice, let's go. It's just, it reminded me a lot it reminded me like of pickup basketball that just had that, way more physicality of football, which I mean, it was literally the perfect sport. So, yeah, it was a ton of fun playing. Those stadiums get rocking. And I'm sure you've seen like all the Buffalo Bandit stuff. Online, like they sell out their stadium. It's such a great sport. It attracts so many different fans, not just lacrosse fans, but hockey fans, MMA fans, you name it, right? It's really cool. So I'm very pumped that I got to play, as we say, had a cup of coffee in the NLL. I was only in the league for 2 years, but I still had an absolute blast. And then getting drafted to the LA Riptide. Coach GW Mix, who's he was our general manager. He's the head coach at CDM. Again, like huge mentor and great friend of mine. So without him, I would have been able to move out here. And he knew I wasn't going to be able to play the summer after my senior year because of my injury. So he drafted me anyway. So the next summer, where it came to about June, I was like, screw it. I got about $500 to my name. I'll just drive west and figure it out this summer and see if I can make enough money, or find a way to make a living where I can stay. But yeah, being able to and again, back then in the MLL, you didn't make a lot of money. It was probably $6,000 for the summer, maybe 10,000 for the best guys. maybe 25,000 for like the best player. So it's, it's really like a secondary job, but it's such a cool opportunity to, travel around the United States to different cities, hang with your buddies, and you get to that point, you're playing professionally, and whatever level that is, you're the 1% of the 1%. It's like, I don't know what the stats are, but it's there's not a lot. It's like 3% of high school lacrosse players make it to college, and the percentage of college players that make it to the pros is even smaller. So being a part of that community was just amazing opportunity, and very rewarding for me. And just the friendships I've made from that has been unreal. Meeting a guy like Brett Hughes, UVA guy that we played against each other. He's a couple years older, but pretty much played every pro team together, from the LA Riptide to the Denver Outlaws to the LXM Pro Tour to Ohio Machine. Like we did, we got to play 6 years together. That was just an unbelievable experience. As he's a close friend of mine. So, guys like Kyle Hartzell and Eric Barton getting to play with some of the best attackmen ever, and Jesse Hubbard, Terry Riordan, Michael Watson, Chaz Woodson, all those guys. So it's just unbelievable experience, and it's kind of surreal for quote unquote football basketball guy from Northern Virginia.
2008, you move out to LA, and the next year you take a job with Palos Verdes in 2009. What were your initial reactions to lacrosse in Southern California, and how have you seen the game grow?
Yeah, my initial response was, it kind of reminded me a lot, where when I first started playing in Northern Virginia, where it was kind of just starting up or just growing. You kind of had like the bruiser football athletes who were playing, and then you had like the quote unquote like stoner crew. And there are a couple times where I it just I had to start getting used to like the refereeing, which I ended up getting a lot better at. But that was a nice wake up call for me. And then my two favorite stories are like, I'm an assistant coach to Lane Jaffe at the time, and we have a kid just like show up super late, and like it's just like mind boggling to me, like a kid just like walking up late like soaking wet, and he's just like, oh, sorry coach, the waves were so good, I just couldn't make it on time. And I'm just like what is going on right now, and then so what was another anecdotal story? Oh yeah, I had a kid text me and said he couldn't make it to practice because he had glass blowing club. And I was like, wait, I'm like, you guys making bongs at these public schools? What's going on right now, man? So it was honestly stereotypically like what I thought it would be, like, a little bit of the surfer culture kind of, weaved its way or spilled over into lacrosse. A lot of those extreme sport athletes, like we had some really good like BMX guys and like motocross guys who like played lacrosse as well, and just loved the physicality and fastness of it. So and then we also had some really good players, like having a guy like Zach Rogers, who's just built like Zeus and ridiculous hands, and ended up going and starting 4 years at Providence and being a captain there. So we got a little bit of both. And my first year or two with PV.
You take over for Lane in 2011, but in 2014, the team starts with 6 straight losses before going on to win the Los Angeles Championship. And this is before CIF got involved and made it a sanctioned sport. But what was it about that group, that 2014 group, that still stands out to you?
Yeah, it was a really special group. I mean, we had a lot of great players on that team, but we it was the group that returned from a 2013 year where we got upset in the LA championship by Harvard Westlake. They had a really great face-off guy, Phil Thompson, who ended up going to play at Princeton. But I also thought we played an absolute like cupcake schedule in 2013. So and that did help us, achieve our goal, which was to win LA. So we kind of came into 2014 as we knew we were young, but we had a really good sophomore junior class that we wanted to push the envelope a little bit and go play all these tough teams. And this is back when like Oak Park was kind of a juggernaut. Loyola was just coming up. Westlake was awesome. Mirror Coast was still pretty good. So, there's a lot of teams in there, and we decided to go, play all those teams. And God, I should really look it up. I was looking at it the other week, which is funny, but yeah, we started 0-6. It's like we lose to Westlake, we lose to Oak Park, we lost to was that lost to Loyola. We lost to what was it? Foothill. That's right. Yeah, lost to Foothill. Lost to Chase Sarah. Yeah, it was fun. It was funny, and like that the 2016 class where I had a bunch of guys go D1. Who else? Yeah, we lost to Cathedral Catholic. Yeah, there was yeah 0-6. That was wild. Oh, and then 2 games, and then that's right. 2 games later, we lost to Peninsula 6-7. So we started 1-7. And for whatever reason, we had that come to Jesus moment, and that was God. That's right. That year, I think the Bay League had all 4 teams were in like the top 6 in LA or top 7 because Redondo was really good with the Fatures and this kid Josh, who ended up playing at Boston. Peninsula was great. Yeah, that 2014, 2015 crew, all played youth lacrosse together for me, and then another coach that helped run it in the PV area, and then half of them went to Peninsula and half of them went to PV. So it was just a really cool team. But again, going on a stretch there, and then being able to kind of come back and beat Loyola, beat Oak Park, and then ended up winning the LA championship. It was pretty cool. It was just a special year where I think I got a lot better as a coach. I will say that 2013 game when we lost the LA championship, it was just every coach has it, but that was my like lose your ego forever moment. Like I wasn't gonna care about wins and losses. Like I was just gonna do everything I could to prepare our guys for the games that mattered.
After your time at PV, you took over at Loyola in 19. What were some of your short-term goals when you took the program over?
Yeah, it got to the point at PV where I don't think as a program we could achieve what I wanted to achieve and get the support from the school that I wanted. So I really wanted to build a program or elevate a program that I felt had the capability to compete and win, not just on a super regional level on the West Coast, but be recognized nationally. And it just wasn't going to happen at PV, unfortunately, as much as I never wanted to leave that place. And again, I live there now. I love that community. It's amazing, but there are limits. So getting to Loyola, obviously I start in July of 2019. We have a great fall ball. Winter's going awesome, and then we get 6 games into the season, and then it's kaput. We're done. So all that kind of work we did just got halted by COVID. So getting through that was a painful process, but being at a school that was able to support us as well as Loyola did, and then getting back to playing in 2021 and ultimately winning that championship for the first year that we had a lacrosse CIF championship was pretty darn special. But I did have some goals, and they were pretty lofty goals. Loyola had never beaten St. Ignatius before, so like my 5 year, I was sitting there after today, or after after we won the championship, just kind of thinking about my 5 year goals and my 5 year plan when I first got the job, and you know the things I wanted to do were, if we want to be the best Jesuit school on the West Coast, and we got to beat St. Ignatius. They've been around since 1980 or 1985, something like that. We need to beat Dallas Jesuit, who's another team that's been around from the 90s. Beat Brophy Prep, who's just a powerhouse down in Arizona. And again, like I wanted to. GW, who's again such a great guy and a mentor to me. Like I just needed to consistently compete and beat the Foothills and the St. Margaret's and the CDMs of the world. So again, being able to accomplish that in the first 2 years, being able to beat SI, being able to beat Dallas Jesuit, being able to beat Brophy Prep, and then this year our program got our first win against Torrey Pines. It's been a powerhouse for forever down in San Diego. So just we just kept kind of slowly chipping away and at those goals and having program first and another program first and another program first. So I think it's been pretty special and probably gonna have to sit down the next couple of weeks and start making some other crazy goals.
Prior to each episode, I have my guests fill out a questionnaire. One of the questions I ask is about mentors, and you name 10, including your dad and legendary NFL coach Jim Mora. How have those mentors helped shape both you on the sideline and in your life?
My dad was the big rugby coach in the DC area. Just growing up, going to his practices, seeing how rugby guys operate, seeing how he coached, him being a military guy, that was always a big impact on me. And not just that, but he took his time out of his busy schedule and coached me in soccer and basketball pretty much up until middle school. So, just having a dad as a coach certainly had a very lasting impact on me. Coach Mora has been great. Like both of his boys, both of his boys play lacrosse for me. It's like Trey. I got Trey a little bit younger. Coaching Ryder pretty much from like eighth grade through high school through club stuff, and then having Trey from probably I don't know fourth or fifth grade. So getting to coach him for a while as well was awesome. But having a coach like that where I'm never afraid to like ask for help, and like I always want to get better. So having a resource like that, who's coached with like guys like Bill Walsh and like legends in that, like and coached all over the NFL and he had just written down some stuff and like we had, a few talks where like, he invited me over to his house and was like, Jimmy, I love this one, like, printing me out stuff and just stuff he's written down, stuff he's learned. I'm just like what a cool opportunity and not just opportunity for me to like learn, but like that's just so nice of a guy like that to take time out of his busy schedule, just share stuff with a high school lacrosse coach. It was cool because it's just I always love leadership and leadership development and how important of a role that takes and just wanted to be the best coach I could be once I decided that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So if you're gonna do something, why not be the best at it, or certainly try to be the best at it. So yeah, it was very cool and very fortunate to kind of cross paths with Coach Mora.
We're talking about Mora Jr., not Mr. Playoffs.
Yeah, Mora Jr.
All right.
Yeah, it's not Mr. Player. Yeah, Mora Jr. Yep.
When I had started at the Trader Joe's that I'm currently at, I had spotted him, and being a 49er fan, I was like, you look familiar. And so I walked up to him and I approached him. I said, excuse me, are you a Mora? And he says, how do you know? And I said, well, I followed your career from Atlanta to San Francisco to Seattle to UCLA. And he goes, oh, you're one of those. I said, no, not like that. Like, I really respect what you've done and I really like seeing you coach. And so to be able to talk to you here is definitely amazing. That will wrap up the serious side of our episode. We're going to transfer into rapid fire. 5 questions. Jimmy's on the spot. Are you ready?
Sure.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
All-time favorite football players?
They're two completely different guys, Deion Sanders and Jerry Rice.
Never. They battled. Your least favorite football team?
Oh, Cowboys.
Finally. Your favorite sports movie?
Man, favorite sports movie. This is tough to do one.
All right, top 3. Let's go.
All right, top three. I'm gonna go. Remember the Titans because Northern Virginia guy, obviously. I'm gonna go Varsity Blues, just a hysterical one for high school, and then I still think Rudy's just such a classic. I hate Notre Dame, but I just love the story.
When you were describing your time as a redshirt freshman and getting pushed around by the top two defensemen in Division One, I'm all that's coming to my mind is you guys don't get better without me. And that's just knowing your personality. I was like, there's part of me that wants to bring that up, but I was waiting for you. But I don't want your laugh.
Yep.
All right. Final question. Wrap it up. Your go-to South Bay eatery and your favorite dish there.
So again, my wife and I's favorite spot is we go down the Hermosa Pier and go to Palmilla. Just unbelievable food, margaritas. We usually go with the short rib tacos. Those are outstanding, and then they do a case like a fondue, like a queso with chorizo in there. It is just and fresh made tortillas and just I can't even like I'll usually get like just the Palmilla margarita, which is almost like a Cadillac, but like anything you get there is just unbelievable. So that is my favorite place in the South Bay for sure.
Awesome. Jimmy, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you. And best of luck to you in the future. I look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you, man.
Of course. All right.